at that year when I was 13 is we moved into a new house. And it was set up so the ground floor was the parents' part, and they had their own phone line. And the upstairs was the kids' part, and we had our own phone line. And we were never supposed to give out our parents' phone line, and they were never going to answer our phone line. And so we knew that that was the thing, and this is going to be so hard for some of you to understand. But the phones were attached to the wall. You could not walk any place you wanted to because that cord limited you, and you might be pacing and you'd get thrown back this way because you'd gone as far as the cord would take you. And so to make us have to share the phone, we only had one phone upstairs, and it had a long cord to it, the long one that went into the wall, and it could be plugged into my sister's room, or it could be plugged into my room, or any of the other 2 bedrooms upstairs. So my sister would keep it plugged into hers, and she had this fairly good-sized closet, and so she would go into the closet and she would talk on the phone. And she literally would talk on the phone from the time she got home at 6 o'clock at night, and they would go to sleep on the phone. And at that point in time, when the phone got busy, when you were on it, it was busy and no one else could call in, and they would get this sound that went, help me with this, beep, 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 beep. My oldest daughter called it hearing polka dots. And so you would hear polka dots, and so for 3 or 4 days, I hadn't gotten a phone call, and I thought, that's unusual because I was a 13-year-old girl. The phone was important to me. And so I wondered what happened, and so I asked a friend, I said, I want you to call me tonight. And she said, okay, I will call you at 6:30 after dinner. And when she called, I knew she called, but nobody ever came to tell me that the phone rang, and I was sitting right there and I didn't hear it ring. So I went in, I knocked on my sister's door, and she told me to go away. And I told her I wanted to talk on the phone, and so she begrudgingly got off the phone and gave it to me. So I called my friend and I said, did you call me? And she said, yes. And so I'm talking, and we're talking, and we're talking, and by this time it's about 7:30, and my sister is going crazy. I guess if she didn't talk to her boyfriend for 20 minutes, her whole world was going to implode. I don't know what the deal was. But so she comes in and she goes, get off the phone. And I said, I'm not going to get off the phone. And she said, yes, you are. And I said, no, I'm not. And so at this point, I haven't grown yet. And she only grew to 5'4", but I'm about 5 feet tall at this point in time. And she outweighs me by about 40 pounds. And so she goes, give me that phone. And when she did that, I laid down completely in the closet and got the phone and pulled it up underneath me. And I said, you're not going to get the phone. Well, she was enough to disconnect me, but she still wasn't going to get that phone. So she sat on my back and she started slapping me across the face. And then I tried to get up, and she took her fingers and she scratched me like I had cat whiskers all the way up here. And 4 weeks earlier, I had gotten my ears pierced. And she took that stud and she pulled it, and to today, I still have an extra rip inside my ear from that. And the earring went flying all over the place. And it really hurt. So I took the phone receiver and I hit her in the head. And that was enough to get her off of me. So at that point, I ran downstairs and I ran out the door, and I went to my friend's house that was closest to me, and she wasn't home. So then I went to another friend's house that was really about a mile away. And her parents were gone, and so we were talking, and I was telling them the story, and of course she agreed with me. She was the youngest of 5. Big sisters were horrible. And so it was about 9 o'clock, and my mother went up to tell us to go to bed when she realized that I wasn't there. And so she called around, and she found out where I was, and so about 10 minutes after 9, she pulls up to this friend's house, and she goes, you need to come home. So we walk in, and my dad's sitting at the kitchen table. Never a good thing. My dad called my sister down, and he said, okay, y'all have to tell me what's going on. And I said, she is on the phone all the time, and I never get to use the phone. And she says, but I'm in love with Paul. I can't live and breathe without Paul. 16-year-olds in love are really pretty sappy. And so he said, well, I'll tell you what, y'all are going to have to figure out something with this phone. And so my sister goes, we could each get our own phone line. He goes, no, that's not going to work. He said, you have to learn how to share this one. Luckily, my little brother was 8 years younger than we were, so he wasn't into phones at this point in time. So the rule that came out of that was that I got the phone from the time we got off of school until 8 o'clock, and she got the phone from 8 o'clock until 10:30. And when my parents went to bed at 10:30, if that phone was not unplugged and at the top of the stairs, then they would come up, and for every minute after 10:30 she didn't put the phone out there, that was a minute a day that she wouldn't get the phone. You understand what I'm saying? So they would come at 10:30 right after the news, and if it wasn't up there, then she would get grounded a day for every minute it wasn't there. So that way they still didn't have to come back upstairs to see. They could see the phone up there. So sisters, luckily my sister did not put me down a well. And I physically couldn't have put her down the well, but at that point, if I had had that option, I might have thought about it, to be honest with you. Because sisters fight, and brothers and sisters fight, and brothers fight. And so in our Old Testament story today, these brothers were so angry at Joseph because his mother was the mother that his dad loved the most. And these other boys had different mothers, and they all knew that they were loved, but not as much as Joseph was. And so they were angry about it. But fast forward 25 years, and Joseph sees his brothers out there. And he really wants family. He really wants to be part of those brothers. He really wants to be there. And at that point, he is in a place where he can feed them. And what he could have done is said, I'm going to let them starve. They treated me like that. I'm going to treat them like that. But they didn't. So fast forward in my life up about 10 years. Actually, it was more like 8. And at this point in time, I have a 2-year-old, and I am 8.5 months pregnant. And my sister is with me, and we walk into the house of a relative. And we go in to say hello, and we think we're going to have a nice chat, and it turns out that this relative is not in a really good place at this time. This relative has been drinking all day, and this relative is just plain mean. And this relative decides that I am his ex-wife that left him, and that he realizes I'm pregnant, and that as his ex-wife that left him, I am now pregnant with some other man's child. And he lights into me like nothing going. And the words coming out of his mouth, I cannot even begin to repeat. And he's just furious at me, and how could I be carrying someone else's baby, and all of this. And I've got this 2-year-old I'm trying to protect. I certainly wasn't expecting this, and he starts coming towards me, and I don't know what he's going to do to me. And at this point, my sister steps in between me and him as he's coming. He's just furious. And the two of them hit each other. They go down on the floor. The cabinet that holds all the dishes flies open. The cups on top go flying out, and they're all over the floor breaking. There's glass shattering everywhere. She looks at me and she goes, "Get out of there and get your daughter out of there too." So the two of us go running out. She's not far behind me. She comes out, she gets in the car, and we drive away. Nobody can mess with my little sister except for me. So at that point in time, I knew that my sister loved me. I knew that beforehand. Because it's easy when we love somebody to forgive them. But what about the family member that came after me? I'm 8.5 months pregnant. I've got a 2-year-old. I mean, has she not been there? What could I have done? It was obvious that he was going to come and that he was going to impose some kind of hurt. But my big sister was there to help. Our gospel today gives us really hard things to do. Our gospel tells us to forgive those who have hurt us. Our gospel tells us to turn the other cheek, that if someone takes your coat, give them your shirt. That if someone hurts you, walk away. That if you give someone money, don't ever expect to be paid back. That's not the world we live in. The world we live in, you don't give anybody money unless they promise, they sign something they're going to pay you back. The world we live in says that if someone offers you a coat, asks you for a coat, you only give them one if you've got another one. You certainly don't give them the one off your back. The world we live in has all of these different rules, and Jesus is telling us about this other one, to forgive people. Well, forgiveness is about us. It's about the gift we get when we forgive someone. Because when we forgive, we say, I am not going to let you occupy space in my mind and my heart anymore. I'm going to forgive you because doing that means you are not going to run my life. We forgive for us. But the hardest part out of that entire gospel, and this is coming from the plains, the story of the plains, and this is the second half of the Beatitudes that we got last week. The hardest part of that is he said, be merciful. And giving mercy is hard. Because giving mercy is not about you being in charge and saying, I forgive you. Giving mercy is about my sinfulness meeting your sinfulness. My sinfulness saying to the person that chewed me out, you know, I've said some really bad things to people before, and I'm a sinner just like you are. But I know Christ made me and Christ loves me. And I know Christ made you and Christ loves you. So giving someone mercy is coming from the place of sinfulness on both sides and saying, I want my Christ person to meet your Christ person. Because giving mercy is giving forgiveness to someone that doesn't deserve it. But each of us are sinners. And I'm sure that there's not anybody, regardless of how old you are, that is sitting here today that hasn't said something they wish they could take back. So we are all there as sinners. So when we choose not to forgive and we choose not to give mercy, we're keeping it from ourselves. But when we offer forgiveness and we offer mercy, we're giving ourselves a gift and saying, now we can be close to God because that's not blocking us. This is tough stuff. And this is stuff usually reserved for 2 weeks from now when we go into Lent. Forgiveness and mercy. Something to think about for the next week. Mercy's a lot harder to give than forgiveness. Because mercy, you have to look at yourself and realize that for everything someone's done to you, you've done something equally bad to somebody else. And with all of it, God loves us, even as sinful as we are, and even as scarred and flawed as we are. God loves every single one of us. Even the boys that put their brother in the well and sold him off. God loved them all. And God loves each and every one of us, regardless of what we've done. Forgiveness and mercy. It's all yours. And all God's people say,